Hey, welcome back to another Marvel Cinematic Saturday. Today, Guardians of the Galaxy. And, you know, it's funny. It's possibly, I would argue that Guardians of the Galaxy is possibly second to only Iron Man in terms of importance to Marvel Studios. Not necessarily to the Marvel Cinematic Universe as a whole, but to the success of Marvel Studios and the success of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Iron Man was a huge risk because he's always been a B list character at best, and it was the start of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and it was Robert Downey Jr. was a massive risk as an actor to use. Um, so Iron Man obviously it launched the whole MCU, so it was very important for that sense. Guardians of the Galaxy was the movie that proved that Marvel Studios could do whatever they want. That they could make movies about whatever characters they feel like, people will watch them. Guardians of the Galaxy was, uh, at the time, it was, there was a lot of speculation about whether it would be the movie that busts the MCU. Whether it would be the movie that kills the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Because a lot of there were people speculating that, who cares about the Guardians of the Galaxy? People speculating that it'd be a flop and all that. Who the hell's going to go see a movie about a talking tree? As it happened, a lot of people. And the success of Guardians of the Galaxy, I think, was the one that was made it the film that really showed that any character, any concept could be done. That said, uh, let's talk a little bit about the Guardians of the Galaxy. So they actually were created in the comics. They debuted in 1969, a comic called Marvel Superheroes, and they were created by Arnold Drake and Stan Lee. It's hard to know. There's no way of knowing, who sort of had the bigger influence on, what was, what role each of those two had in creating it. It's one of the few times where Stan Lee hasn't really talked much, where Stan Lee didn't really talk much about his involvement in creating characters, and it's just one of those things where like neither of them really ever seemed to talk much about the creative process. Uh, the concept at the time actually was it was set in the future. Uh, I want to say maybe 1,000 years in the future. Um, Earth had been conquered by an alien species known as the Badoon, very lizard-like species, very reptilian. Uh, Honestly, the Chitauri kind of remind me a bit of the Badoon. Um, but yeah, so they had conquered actually the entire solar system. The solar system had been colonized by humanity, and the Badoon had conquered it. The initial team was made up of four people. There was Vance Astro, an astronaut from our time, who had gone on a been put on a ship to visit Alpha Centauri. He, was a long ways away, thousands of light years away. So he was in a cryogenic stasis the whole time. By the time he got there, it turned out that humanity had already gotten there a long time ago. Uh, and when he got there, he met Yondu, who obviously is a major character here. Uh, Very different. The original comic version of Yondu was very spiritual. He was he was space Native American. I'm just gonna say it. He was space Native American. Um, at a time when actual Native Americans didn't get to appear in comic books. Uh, Arnold Drake tried. He tried. I'll give him that. Yeah, he was face Native American, but just set on another world. The other two members, there was Charlie 27, who comes from Jupiter, I believe. He was a thick man. He was thick. Um, yeah, genetically engineered to withstand Jupiter's heavy gravity, so he was a thick boy. And Martin X, who was from Mercury, I believe. And he was crystalline, genetically engineered to survive working on Mercury, so he was crystalline. Able to. I think he was able to like create like ice blasts and fire blasts. It's weird. Anyway, so yeah, that was the original team, and then they bounced around a little bit. Their initial appearance apparently sold pretty well, but they sort of dropped off for a couple years. A few years later, they did get a solo series that ran for like 12 issues, um, but mostly they just showed up in other books. They would team up with other heroes who would be traveling to the future. You know, there'd be time travel shenanigans involved to team them up and blah blah blah. In 1990, they got a new series launched by Jim Valentino, who wrote and draw it, and that was actually a really good series. Their '90s series was really good. He didn't stick around for the whole thing of it. He introduced a bunch of new characters. Uh, was he the one who introduced Nikki? Yeah, he introduced a bunch of new characters and things like that. But yeah, like I said, that one I actually kind of liked that one. That one was a pretty good series. I enjoyed it. Oh, whoops, no, I was wrong. Nikki debuted in 1976, so he debuted in their first solo series. She's not in this movie though. She's she gets a very slight cameo in the second movie. I'll talk about that at that point. But yeah, so and yes, Jupiter. Yes, so yeah, Charlie 27 is from Jupiter, but again, not in the movie, so who cares? So yeah, and then so yeah, their series lasted for pretty good while in the '90s. Ran for 60 odd issues, I think. Uh, I don't remember how long it ran for, but yeah, it ran for 62 issues. So it ran for 62 issues, which is not bad. And then 2008 was when a new series launched, and that one is where the movie draws most of its inspiration. That comic was launched by Dan Abnett and Andy Lanning, uh, who are often just shortened to DNA. Uh, that's what I'll probably just keep calling them. And yeah, that one had it had Star Lord, it had Gamora, it had Rocket, it had Groot. Um, I had a few other characters who aren't even in this movie. Adam Warlock, uh, Mantis, I think Moondragon. Or was she in the whatever? Uh, or yeah, I think Moondragon. Whatever. So like I said, that's where this movie drew most of its inspiration in terms of the team layout and the aesthetics and really just everything. Yeah, so it was the 2008 Abnett Landing. Um, they had a really good run with Marvel's cosmic side. They were doing Nova. They did a few other books. There was a few events, a few pretty major events that were really well received, and were, by all accounts, way better than anything that was happening than the Earth based events of the time. Because Marvel Comics loves its events, its big summer events. But anyway, so the movie starts. Movie does get start off very sad for a comedic movie. Um, Comedy can make tragedy a lot more powerful. Um, that's why I think the comic of I Kill Giants comic is way better than the I Kill Giants movie. But that's a rant for another time. But yeah, so not sure that it really kicks that the sadness that the comedy really enhances the sadness in this movie, but whatever. Uh, it is a very interesting way of starting what is essentially a comedy. Just starting off with dead mom, you know, and then yeah, get into the dancing, which used to be a bad sign in superhero movies. You know, it used to be if you were watching a superhero movie and the characters started dancing, you were in trouble. Fantastic Four 2, Spider Man 3. Yeah, dancing? You never used to be. You didn't want dancing in superhero movies. And our first introduction to Star Lord, Peter Quill. His history is really weird. So he actually debuted in 1976 in Marvel Preview number 4. He was created by Steve Englehart and Steve Gann. Englehart had some plans for him, but didn't really get to carry them on. Uh, he was then taken over by Chris Claremont, who is best known, of course, for his X-Men work. In fact, funnily enough, there's an issue of there was an issue of his. I think it was all still Marvel Preview that it was appearing in, but of one of Star Lord's stories. That was the first time that Chris Claremont, John Byrne, and Terry Austin all worked together. They, of course, would be arguably the most iconic Uncanny X-Men creative team. They're the ones who did Phoenix and Dark Phoenix, Days of Future Past, um, and some other stories in between. So yeah, and they got it there, and they first worked together on Star Lord. His origin was weird. Last time he showed up was 1982, which is actually a reprint of the Claremont Byrne Austin story. Uh, so from 1982, he didn't show up again until 2004 in a Thanos uh, ongoing series, of all places. And then a little after that, of course, he was in major event called Annihilation, and that was what led to the Abnett Landing, Guardians of the Galaxy, and all that. So, um, yeah, and his origin in the original comics is alternate reality version of it, alternate timeline. Um, yeah, the original is it's weird. It's not worth getting into, except yeah, he got his powers from a dude named Master of the Sun, and his gun could fire different elements. Um, You know, earth, water, fire, air. Um, he had a sentient spaceship. Yeah, it was weird. He became a very different character when he reappeared, especially once his origin was sort of recreated in advance of the movie. Uh, though not long ago, in the Al Ewing run on Guardians of the Galaxy, he brought back the Master of the Sun stuff and gave Star Lord the Element Gun again. So, Al Ewing is a guy. Al Ewing is a writer who loves continuity. He just loves playing with continuity. Um, so, yeah, he just loves doing stuff like that. We're bringing forgotten elements from characters past back into play. So anyway, yeah. So that's where Peter Quill debuted. Um, yeah, the origin is fun. It's a fun, or not origin, the beginning. It's a fun start to the movie. It kicks off well. Uh, shows Star Lord as being very resourceful. Um, also shows him as being bit as being a jerk by forgetting that he had a woman in his ship. I think he named her. I think her name was Barit, and I think she's actually. I think that name actually comes from a an old black and white Incredible Hulk run Marvel preview. I think it's Marvel previews as well. Um, it was a weird one. We got our first meeting with Ronan the Accuser, who was created in 1967 in the Jack Kirby Stanley Fantastic Four run. Uh, Ronan the Accuser. Actually, that was also where the Kree debuted. Funnily enough, uh, he was basically the Kree version of law enforcement, judge, jury, and executioner. Um, you know, if someone transgressed against the Kree Empire, he would show up and kill them. Um, this is also where we meet Nebula, who debuted in 1985 in the Avengers comic, created by Roger Stern and John Buscema. She was created as Thanos' granddaughter, though it was always, there was always question about whether she was being honest about it. It was one of those things where she claimed to be Thanos' granddaughter. Not everyone believed her. Um, and Gamora, she was created in 1975 by Jim Starlin. Her planet was wiped out by the Church of Universal Truth, which was a murder cult. And she was the very last of her people, the Zenhubarians. Thanos found her, adopted her, raised her to kill the head of the Church of the Universal Truth. Um, so she wasn't really a daughter so much as a tool. Um, Gave her a bit of a complicated relationship with him. Then I do like how, or actually no, that's later. Xandar debuted in 1976 in Nova Number One by Marv Wolfman, legendary creator. Nova Corps was introduced a few years later in Fantastic Four. in 1979. They're really similar to the Green Lantern Corps. Um, Sort of a knockoff in a lot of ways. They don't have the same. It's not the exact same power. The Novas can't create. They don't create things with their brains or anything like that. They're more just strength, speed, and energy blasts. Um, but similar concept in being a bunch of galactic cops. Uh, Roman Day, who we actually see at the end of the first of the three-way fight between um, Quill, Gamora, and Rocket and Groot. Roman Day was in the comics the one who gave the Nova power to Richard Rider. Yes, people have people are well aware of the what that name can be changed to. So yeah, Nova Corps. I've never found the Nova Corps very interesting to myself. There's a lot of people who do want to see Nova show up in the MCU. Um, I'm, a little bit less interested in that. I don't really care much, but whatever. I will say Xandar in the comics is way more interesting than Xandar in the movie. Because in the comics, it's like a bunch of. Uh, it's more of a space station. Uh, like bits of the city to spread out in different orbs, connected by tunnels, I guess. Um, it looks cool in the comics. Here it's just a planet. Then introduced to Rocket and Groot. Rocket was created in 1976 by Bill Mantlo and Keith Giffen. He actually debuted in a Hulk story of all places. He comes from a planet called Half World, which is which is basically a galactic insane asylum. With where the attendants are animals, just to, I guess, put the inmates at ease. Rocket was sort of head of security, I think, or something like that. Head of security there, I think. Uh, he appeared a few times over the next few years, but not very often. Again, it was the Annihilation and the Guardians of the Galaxy and all that brought him back and made him relevant. Groot. He was created by Kirby and Lee. He debuted in 1960 as just a monster comic enemy. He was an alien invader. Nothing particularly notable. I don't know if he even actually had any other appearances. I think he might have sort of appeared once or twice after in stories that were paying homage to the classic monster stories of the 50s and early 60s. But very different character. He was an enemy, spoke in full sentences. Though I think when he debuted, he actually spoke in full sentences early in the DNA stuff as well. It was I haven't read that. I haven't actually read all of that, all of the DNA stuff. But I believe he did speak in full sentences at first, and then something happened. He got blown up or something, and when he came back, he could only say, "I am Groot," and became more heroic, more wholesome. I do like Rocket's commentary on people. Making fun of one dude's haircut, telling a kid to walk by yourself, you little gargoyle, calling Stanley a prevert. It's just fun stuff. And then during the big fight, I noticed that at one point, Gamora's boots go from the weird ass high heel with like the hollow bit in the middle, which is stupid. Those are not the right boots for a goddamn assassin to wear. But at one point, they go from those ridiculous heels to flats and then back again. But yeah, those heels are just. Why would you do that? Why the hell would you? Why would you think that that's a good idea? I can understand that you want it to look imposing, you want it to look tall, so I can understand why you'd want the actress to wearing heels to make her look taller, to make the character look taller. But don't make it look like the character is wearing heels, okay? The actress, sure, but the character, no. Especially, like I said, a goddamn assassin. Like, her job is fighting. That's what she does. You know what doesn't help with fighting? Heels. High heels. Especially when they're like 6 inches tall. And have a big friggin' hole in them. Like, it's just like the most ridiculous wedge boot I have ever seen. And it's not like it's just a terrible visual idea. And I mean, like, Gamora looks bad throughout that entire fight scene, honestly. She's supposed to be the most dangerous woman in the galaxy. Like, that's her actual nicknames in the comics. The most dangerous woman in the galaxy. And here she can't even take down one dumbass. She gets taken down by friggin' Star-Lord. Like, Star-Lord's resourceful. Sure, he's not a pushover. But he's still just some dumbass compared to the most dangerous woman in the galaxy. It shouldn't even be a fight. It should be like 3 hits and he's unconscious. With one of those hits being him hitting the ground. So it makes her come across so bad. While they're being booked, I did notice that Rocket's associates, listed as associates, include Lila, who is actually his girlfriend in the comics. I liked that touch. I liked them tossing in a little reference to her. We got the obligatory shirtless scene for Peter Quill. Chris Pratt put in a lot of work to get fit, so they have to make, so they have to show that off. Nice for the women and gay men, I suppose, but I will say a co-ed prison seems like a really bad idea. Like, men and women in the same prison? Like, that's... No, that's just... That doesn't make sense. At least put them on different sides of the prison, Keep them isolated somehow. Keep them separated somehow. Whatever. And we get our first view of Drax, who was created in 1973 by Jim Starlin, who also created Thanos, who Jim Starlin created Cosmic Marvel in some respects. Or I should say, Jack Kirby created Cosmic Marvel, and then Jim Starlin co-created it. Like those two did the bulk of setting up the cosmic stuff. Most of what comes, most of what is has come has was inspired by one or both of those two. Uh, so yeah, in the comics, Drax isn't an alien. He's actually a human. A guy by the name of Arthur Douglas, jazz musician, played saxophone, I think. Uh, he was driving down highway and happened to pass under Thanos' ship. So Thanos' ship just blew up the car. Uh, his daughter Heather was rescued and taken to Titan. Uh, she grew up to become Moon Dragon, anti-hero turned actual hero. Uh, I don't think she hasn't appeared in the movies yet, which is kind of a shame. She's cool. I like Moon Dragon. She's kind of a bitch, but it's fun. Anyway, Arthur was resurrected by Thanos' grandfather, Kronos. Uh, he was resurrected as basically to hunt down and stop Thanos. Uh, wasn't often successful. He got his ass kicked by Thanos a lot, to be honest. After that whole fight, I really like Nebula's voice. I mean, Karen Gillan's a great actress to begin with. And really pretty. Karen Gillan's so good looking. But I like the like that echo in her voice, like that mechanical aspect that they gave her. It makes her sound even cooler. The whole escape sequence, prison escape, is really cool. I really like that whole thing. Uh, for the first time in the movie, Gamora actually gets to come across as legitimately dangerous, uh, beating up those guards easily. Um, the bit of Rocket wanting the prosthetic leg and it being a joke. Once you hear about how disabled people reacted to it, like there were a few disabled people who didn't take kindly to that joke. There was definitely an ableist element to that joke. Um, yeah, it's funny when you don't think about that aspect of it, but then you think about it, it's like, wait, no, that is really bad. No, that's like terrible. But whatever. uh, then they go to Nowhere, which comes from the Abnett and Lanning. Debuted in their Nova run, along with its head of security, Cosmo, Russian psychic Russian dog, uh, who we do see in Collector's collection, along with a dark elf. Notice that there's a dark elf in his collection, but Cosmo's great. He thinks in a Russian accent. it's just it's just great. He's awesome. During the whole bar scene when they're waiting to talk to the Collector, uh, when Rocket shouts that, I didn't ask to be made, that actually is a hell of a line. When they do go to see the Collector, um, from what I understand, Peter Quill dropping the orb was an actual accident. Like that was actually, uh, what's his name, Chris Pratt, like legitimately dropped it, and they just decided to keep it in. And then that scene is where we learn about the Infinity Stones, or the Infinity Gems in the comics. Uh, the Infinity Gems debut, like the first one appeared in like the late 60s or early 70s or something like that. No, I think it was the 70s. The Infinity Stones appeared throughout the 70s and 80s, but they were referred to as soul gems, and they appeared sporadically, and there wasn't much lore about them. It was the 1990 Thanos Quest mini, written by guess who, Jim Starlin. Uh, that was where we really got. That was where the comics really dove into the lore of the Infinity Gems, explained where they came from, what they were, set differentiated them between soul, power, mind, space, reality, time. Um, yeah, pretty much everything about the Infinity Gems came from that mini, and it led, of course, into the iconic uh, Infinity Gauntlet mini event, which that's more about the third Avengers movie is really about that. So I'll talk more detail about that when I get to Infinity, whatever that movie was. I don't even remember the name of it now. But yeah, it's huge. And we also get to see a Celestial there. They debuted in 1976's Eternals mini by series, not mini, ongoing by Jack Kirby, which I didn't like. I don't like Jack Kirby's 70s Marvel stuff. Actually, what it is, I don't like Jack Kirby when he's writing his own stuff, especially when he doesn't have someone else editing. Because when he came back to Marvel in the 70s, he was writer, artist, and editor on his own comics, and that always strikes me as a bad way of going about it. Uh, then the scene where the five of them are sort of arguing about going after Ronan. Um, it's a good scene. There's some tension there. There's camaraderie. It's where they become a real team. Um, Also, I like Rocket's line, "We're all standing up now. Bunch of jackasses standing in a circle." And then Cherry Bomb, the only song in this movie that I actually enjoy. Cherry Bomb. Love that song. That's such a good song. Uh, the rest of the music in this movie, I don't like. I'm sorry. I'm not a classic rock fan. I'm just not. So all the 70s and 80s stuff that shows up, I'm just not a fan of any of it. But Cherry Bomb by the Runaways, hell yeah! That song rocks. Yeah, that song stands up as just a killer track. Um, During the big epic space battle, I like the Nova ship blockade. That's a really cool idea and cool visual. I like that Yondu finally gets to actually use his arrow. He spends the whole movie threatening it, and then he finally gets to use it. That does come from the comics. The original Yondu, he'd actually fire it with a bow, and then he'd direct it with a whistle. And yeah, it's cool. Gets way cooler usage in the second movie, but yeah, it's nice to see him actually get to use it here. Um, During the fight on the Dark Aster, Groot's grin after just spearing a bunch of guys and just smashing them around wildly. Yeah, just he's just like shouting and screaming as he smashes dudes against walls repeatedly, and then just turns around and I like that grin. Uh, Groot sacrifice as the ship is crashing. We are Groot. You know, who'd have thought that a line like that could actually bring a tear to your eye? You know, like who knew that a tree capable of saying three words, would bring a tear to your eye just by using a just by replacing one word. Um, the dance off distraction. Uh, that's definitely a fun moment. Um, and the take my hand moment. Um, really well done. The fact that the movie opened with that scene and then sort of bookending it really well. I don't think it would have worked as well if that take my hand scene had appeared anywhere else in the movie. Like if his flashback had appeared anywhere else in the movie. As it is, it's a great moment to give him a second chance. Um, Gamora in a skirt, I'm okay with that. She's got nice legs. I do like looking at. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna pretend I'm anything I'm not. No, she's got nice gams. And then dancing potted Groot, which was freaking everywhere. And then the post credits cameo of Howard the Duck, voiced here by Seth Green. Howard, I love Howard. Howard the Duck, created by Steve Gerber, and had a pretty wild solo series back in the day. Yeah, Howard the Duck's great. I love Howard. Uh, yeah, I mean it's a fun movie. Everyone, all the actors deliver good performances. Everyone does a solid job. There's a lot of great humor. There is some very effective pathos, some effective drama. Um, there is, unfortunately, Gamora in those stupid wedge heels. Just, I genuinely do not understand the reasoning behind those wedge heels. I'll never understand the reasoning behind it. Making characters look taller is one thing, but you want to hide the fact that the characters are wearing heels. If you want a female character to look imposing, to look physically imposing, you hide the fact that she's wearing heels. When you actually make it blatantly obvious that she's wearing massive wedge heels, then you have just completely erased her height game. Because now the audience is incapable of not realizing that she only looks tall because of heels. You've just destroyed any suspension of disbelief that the woman uh, is actually tall. It's just make up your mind at that point. Either she's short, in which case don't bother with the heels at all, or she's tall, in which case hide the fact that she's wearing giant wedge heels. So yeah, a couple of decisions like that, a couple of inexplicable choices, but for the most part, The movie was really well made. Um, Most of the humor uh, worked. Um, the Quill Gamora love story, it felt a little bit obligatory, and um, I mean it comes from the comics as well, I believe, or did it? Actually, come to think of it, I forget if Quill and Gamora were actually interested in each other before the movie, but uh, didn't entirely, or the way they went about it didn't entirely work for me. Um, it's not that it was done poorly. It's not that it shouldn't have been there. It's just there were moments that didn't quite click. At least in my mind. Um, we'll say, as fun as the movie is, uh, was not a fan of the effect it had on the comics. Because, like, most of the time, complaints about, you know, the comics trying to be like the movies are usually overblown. This was an exception. They tried really, really, really hard to make the Guardians comics the Guardians movie. Um, they changed characters' personalities uh, from how they were usually depicted in the comics to fit how they were portrayed in the movie. They had the Guardians freaking everywhere in the comics. You could not get away from them. They just showed up everywhere and were just everything. It was honestly obnoxious how much Marvel Comics was pushing the Guardians of the Galaxy um, in an effort to tie in with the movies. One thing that was a little bit annoying. So all of them got spin-off comics of their own. Um, it took a weirdly long time for Gamora's spin-off comic to actually come out. Uh, Part of it was the writer um, ended up having to delay because of some stuff that she had going on. Uh, but even aside from that, it felt like it just took longer than it did for the male characters for it to even start, for her to even get off the ground like that. Uh, but yeah, they were just like, it was just really, 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 really bad just how much Marvel hyped the Guardians after the movie came out. Did not enjoy that. Um, which does, I will admit, hamper my enjoyment of the movie in retrospect. Still a good movie. It shouldn't hamper my enjoyment of the movie, but there's just that little bit of bitterness in me that's like, yeah, just that little bit of me that's bitter about Marvel Comics trying to make it the movie. But yeah, it is very much an enjoyable movie. Um, Much more enjoyable than the next movie I will be watching, sadly. Because, yeah, next up is Age of Ultron. not a fan of that movie. And I'll also say that I feel like Guardians 2 is probably better than Guardians 1. But that I'll talk about when I get to that movie. Yeah, this movie honestly sets up a lot of stuff that I'll be talking about in other videos. But for now, yeah, thanks for watching, and have a nice night.